If every man suddenly disappeared, what would happen to the world? Subaru stock. Less people dying of testicular and prostate cancer. We did it, guys. Thanks to cryobanks, we'd likely see more men reappear within a decade. Question is, where are we going to? Is it a new planet? Or are we just dying? The Taliban probably wouldn't be as much of a problem. You should read Why, The Last Man. I can't really think up any hypothetical scenarios that aren't covered in that story. It's a no man's world. It's raining no men's. No man in the mirror. It will become no man land. A fair bit of lesbianism. Sort by controversial if you hate yourself. Toilet seats would stay down. A lot of people would be real sad when their dad, brother, husband, friend died. Approximately half of the vehicles on the road would suddenly crash. Big urinal on suicide watch. Axe needs a new marketing strategy to target the female market. Sperm banks will need armed security. My mother would miss me very much. Considering that would be more than half the population, I think they would be a very high demand for essential worker jobs. The sex toy industry would be lit. What's an NSFW facts about a historical figures that we don't learn in school? Wonder Woman was created by a polyamorous man who was A. a feminist, B. a kinkster, and C. living with two bisexual women. Wonder Woman was influenced by at least one of his wives, and started as a very overt, kinky, empowering sex symbol for women, and was nearly cancelled because of how explicitly she was being depicted. It's supposed that her rope of truth was partly inspired by rope play in BDSM. F. Scott Fitzgerald's wife, Zelda, told him that the way he was built, he would never please a woman. He confessed this to Hemingway in a French bar, and Hemingway told him to meet him in the bathroom, where he looked at Fitzgerald's dick and told him he was perfectly fine. Emperor Nero kicked his wife Poppaea to death. He later found a slave boy named Sporus who looked like Poppaea, had him castrated, and kept him as his wife. After the death of Nero, Sporus was taken by nymphidias Sabina, who treated Sporus as his wife. But Sabina was murdered by his guards when he tried to become emperor. Sporus was next taken by the Emperor Otho, who had once been married to Poppaea until Nero took her away from him. Otho called Sporus Poppaea and took him as his wife. Otho was murdered shortly afterwards. Otho's rival, Vitellius, planned on using Sporus in a reenactment of the rape of Proserpina in the Colosseum, but Sporus committed suicide. Victor Hugo wrote in the nude as a form of motivation. He was a horrible procrastinator, so he would lock himself in a room and have his clothes taken as encouragement to get his work done, because he was cold. When he was finished, he'd get his clothes back. The Boris Yeltsin pizza incident, in which the former Russian leader was found in just his underwear outside the White House hailing a cab so he could go get pizza. That one French president who ended up dying of a blowjob. Herodotus, an ancient Greek historian, once stated that female mummies who passed away in ancient Egypt were found more decomposed than male mummies. The reason being was that the females were kept at home for longer periods of time before sent for embalming to prevent necrophilia. Lord Byron was an anorexic, drug and sex addict who shagged his sister. A lot. Edit, wow, this really took off, smiley face. I was going to write about Casanova, but I couldn't be bothered with all the typing, it would be a hell of a lot to type. But if you want another wild ride, look up that POS. Not quite a historical figure, but John Pemberton, the inventor of Coca-Cola, did so because he was chronically addicted to morphine and was trying to get off of it. Original ingredients were cocaine, famously, sugar, alcohol, and caffeine. He was trying to supplant his other addiction. It did not work. The author of Frankenstein lost her virginity on her mother's grave. John Quincy Adams boasted that outdoor boning was an American invention. Between that, his pet alligator, and a life spent in public service, literally from his teenage years until his death, probably far more interesting than most people who've held high office in the USA. Ben Franklin liked to stand nude in front of open windows. Victor Hugo was a very diligent visitor at the Parisian brothels. So much so that the day he was buried, all the Parisian brothel closed for the day so prostitutes could go to the funeral. Kary Mullis was doing a lot of LSD when he developed polymerase chain reaction, PCR. That Adolf Hitler might have had an illegitimate child. A French man by the name of Jean-Marie Loret claimed that his mother told him he was the son of Hitler on her deathbed and supposedly had letters sent by Hitler to his mother. Jean passed away in the 80s, but his son is still alive, and he is curious if his father's claims were true or not. He took a DNA test back in 2018 to see if he is in fact the grandson of Hitler, however, we don't know the results of the test yet. What is falsely seen as a sign of maturity? Not acting childish. Sounds so strange, but the most mature people usually have no problem tapping into their childish or silly sides. Immature people overdo it trying to be cool. Being in a relationship. Having kids. Working 60+ hours a week. Stop enjoying. Age. Having a spouse and kids. When I became a man, I put away childish things, including the fear of childishness and the desire to be very grown up. C.S. Lewis. Being above humor and putting others down for joking around. When you are a true adult, you can also know how to be a child. Giving up things you enjoy because they're childish. Giving up or belittling adults for enjoying what they like is childish. I have seen many examples of people mistaking arrogance with confidence. Confidence, of course, being a sign of maturity. I have been there myself when I was younger. Incredibly arrogant, and I thought I was being confident. But confidence is someone who is secure in themselves and who don't feel the need to prove themselves to others all the time. Arrogance is the opposite of that. Being stiff and mature. Basically putting yourself above others due to their position in comparison to yourself. That just shows insecurity, if anything. When the eldest child is made to be a third parent and is good at it, it does not mean they're mature. They're still children forced to raise their siblings. Not apologizing to younger people. Young people tend to go through a phase where they try desperately to distance themselves from childish things. They are so very super serious. In this phase, fun is not for adults. Meanwhile, here I am at 40 giggling at Ninja Turtles cartoons. Being an adult does mean you have to make room for serious things, and for sure, a lot of modern adults are far too invested in trite frivolities for their own good. But if you cannot turn it off now and then and laugh at Scooby-Doo, I feel bad for you. Talking about sex, drinking. I had a coworker who was 2 years older than me constantly call me a kid because, unlike her, I don't talk about how much I need a good fucking from my boyfriend while at work. Bish, we are at the exact same point in our lives. These 2 years of difference between you and me would have mattered if we were in high school, but we're at work and I honestly don't care to hear how unsatisfied you were with that fucking while I'm peeling freaking watermelons. Having a career requiring very specialized expertise. I know doctors and lawyers who are incredibly emotionally immature. Their kids are usually good evidence of this hidden secret.